Oh, I still don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, yokoso wa shitare. Welcome back again to another installment of I honestly have no idea what I'm doing, but carpe diem, right? Is that the phrase? I'm more concerned with ancient Japanese languages, not ancient Mediterranean European ones. But anyway, do you guys want to hear a story? You want to hear a story? I like stories. Let's do a story. Once upon a time, in a place called Hirosawa, there was a monk by the name of Kancho. Now, I know what some of you guys are thinking. You hear that name and you instantly start getting ideas because maybe some of you watched Naruto and you know that word. However, kanji is completely different, okay? I'm not making fun of this priest. That's just his name. And normally I would tell you guys to stop being so immature and being silly degenerates, but butts are actually a little bit pertinent to this story, so I guess you're going to think about butts one way or another, so whatever. Anyway, this priest, Kancho, stop laughing, he was not a commoner. He was of noble blood. Not only was he of noble blood, he was actually of royal blood. He was the son of an imperial prince, referred to here as Shikibukyo no Miya, which wasn't his name, it was his title, his rank, his position in government. The Japanese actually didn't use names all that often. In fact, if you read the Tale of Genji, which is probably the single most important piece of ancient Japanese literature, they hardly ever use names. Everyone is referred to by their title, if they're referred to at all, and you're supposed to tell based on who's using honorific and who's using humbling and who's using polite. You're supposed to know by the language largely who is talking about whom and understand everyone's interconnected relationships that way. But what's important here is that Kancho was not a commoner, he was royalty. But he was also a big fan of Buddhism, specifically the sect called Shingon Buddhism. And he devoted himself to the practice with all the nobility and grace that his fancy upbringing could afford. Now, since he was a resident of the place called Hirosawa, and he was a Buddhist priest, and he was an elite, he basically got given a managerial position at the local Buddhist temple, Niwaji. But the temple was actually in a state of disrepair, and Kancho thought it would be a good idea to fix it back up. Make things a little bit nicer. You know, that's a good idea. That's nice. So he had some hemp ropes prepared. He got some scaffolding set up around the temple. And then he got a bunch of carpenters and a bunch of artisans to come and help make the temple spick and span again. Make it look really nice. But you know, he leaves the carpenters and the professionals to do their thing for a few days. And he decides one day that he wants to go on a walk, you know, a nightly evening walk. And why not walk by the temple just to see how progress is coming along? Just check up on things. I'm sure things are going swell, but it's nice to go see every once in a while. So Kancho puts on some geita, which are like shoes made out of blocks of wood with really, really long blocks on the bottom. And specifically what they're meant to do is they're meant to keep people who are wearing really billowy type clothing from dragging on the ground. But he puts on some of these geita. He tied up his robes nice and snug with an obi, which is a thing that you use to tie your robes. He grabbed a cane and he set out for this temple. And it wasn't particularly far from where he was actually living. But, you know, it took him maybe a few minutes to get there. And he's walking, enjoying the twilight air. He gets to the temple. Things are coming along smoothly, just as he assumed. And he starts weaving his way in between the scaffolding so he can get inside and inspect things and take a good look at things from multiple angles. Because he did want to genuinely see how things were coming along, not just go for a walk, but why not kill two birds with one stone? So he's weaving in and out of this scaffolding, and he's on the inside, and he's looking and enjoying things, and it's coming together nicely. When, just then, a man dressed completely in black, with his hat, his headdress, whatever it was that he was wearing on his head, I don't really know how to describe it in English. He had it pulled low over his eyes. And this, combined with the twilight, the very little sunlight that was still only glowing, Kancho couldn't really get a good look at this guy's face. And not only that, but this guy had a sword that he was doing a very poor job of hiding, in that he wasn't actually really hiding it, he was hiding it, right? And he comes up to Kancho, takes a knee. Of course, Kancho sees this, and he looks at the guy, and Kancho says, "Who are you? Can I help you?" And this man in a very fake, sort of respectful manner, just tells Kancho, "Well, good Sir Priest, I am but a humble man of humble origin, and I find it is very cold this night, and I was hoping that you, good monk, would be willing to part with some of that fancy clothing you're wearing." And like I said, clothing back in the day was basically akin to money. Clothing could sell for a lot, and Kancho, being not only a high-ranking priest, but a prince's son, so the grandson of an emperor, he probably had very, very nice clothing. So to put this into more modern perspective, imagine you're just kind of hanging out on the street, and some guy comes up wearing dark clothes with a hood pulled over his head, and he's got his hand, he's doing something like this with his hand, like he's ready to pull something out. And he says, "Well, I'm just a poor man, and I was hoping that you would be willing, wink, wink, to give me, wink, wink, some of that fancy money that you've got in your pockets." So clearly, this guy was just trying to shake Kancho down for money. And it was clear, even though the words that he was saying was actually very polite, it was clear that he was trying to mug him. And Kancho, though, being a exceptional Buddhist priest and being very strong of mind, he just looks at this guy and he says, "If you had asked me nicely for some extra help and some clothing, being a servant of the Buddha, I would have been more than happy to help you out. But instead of asking me nicely, you're hiding your face and you're threatening me with that sword I can clearly see you have, like the scoundrel that you are." So clearly Kancho's not in the mood to give this guy anything. Now, this next part, it's a little weird. I'll give you my embellished version, and then I'll give you what the story actually says, because, quite frankly, I don't think the original makes a whole lot of sense, and I like my embellished version more, because shameless plug. So, anyway, this dude realizes that his cover's blown. Kancho is not going to willingly part with any of his valuables. So this guy lunges at Kancho, who deftly sidesteps him, and then, and I apologize, please pardon my French, but it's just too good of an opportunity to not use a little bit more colorful language, and then, with one foot, just winds it up and gives the dude one super strong kick right in the ass, just right up the backside of his butt, just boom. But he kicks him with so much force that he actually loses his footing and he falls back over. And then he scrambles to get back up, because, oh no, there's this guy and I don't know what happened. And he gets up and he looks around, he looks left, he looks right, and there's nobody there. The guy's gone, completely gone. Just poof. And of course, Kancho starts thinking, okay, that's weird. Where did he go? I don't know. Now again, in the original story, it says that Kancho just moved around the potential thief. He just moved around him and gave him a kick on the buttocks, and the guy suddenly disappeared. Which again, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, so I like the idea that he kicked him so hard that he fell over, right? That he fell over and he got up, and poof, the guy is gone. But anyway, after being a little freaked out by not seeing the guy and wondering if maybe he's going to pop out of the corner and jump him again, he immediately heads back to his place of residence, where not just he resides, but a whole slew of priests and monks and Buddhist practitioners. So he heads back, and once he gets close enough, he starts shouting for somebody, "Hey, help, help, somebody come help me, I need help." And another priest from this residency area came running to go see what was up, and he gets to Kancho, and Kancho tells him, "Go grab a torch and come follow me. Some punk just tried to mug me over by the temple, and we need to go find him. So go get some of the others, have everybody get swords, have everybody get torches, and let's go find this guy because we can't leave him out there." So the other priest goes running back into where all the other priests are hanging out. He tells them, about 70 of them get together, they get swords, they get torches, and they go out to go try to find this guy. And when they arrive at the scene, Kancho shows them, leads them there, and he explains to them the story. He told them, "I was standing right here when a guy suddenly came out and tried to mug the clothes off of me. And I kicked him in the butt in self-defense, and he suddenly disappeared. And I have no idea where he's gone, but we need to find him. He might still be out here. Keep your torches high, and let's get him." Now, a lot of the other priests kind of heard this story, and they thought it was actually kind of funny. I mean, really, it's like a guy tried to mug a priest, a Buddhist priest, who are sworn to not commit violence or to harm any living thing. These innocent, harmless old men, and he got his butt kicked, literally got his butt kicked so hard that he disappeared. They were just kind of like, okay, that's an amusing story. But they didn't have time to question it or to understand how exactly this all worked because they had a job to do. They needed to find this guy, this ne'er-do-well, who might cause havoc on other people. So they're looking around, and one of them in particular looks up, and he notices what looks like a man stuck in the scaffolding. And so he shouts, come here, I think I found somebody. And so Kancho and some of the other priests come running, and Kancho takes a look at the guy and notices, oh, he's wearing black clothing, but he's still a little too far away to get a final picture. So he climbs up the scaffolding and takes a look, and sure enough, not only is this guy wearing black, but he's got that same headdress, and he's holding on to a sword. But he was stuck. He couldn't move. And so the priests all, after they remove the sword from him, they manage to pull him out, they get him down, and they take him back to where they were all staying. And once they had this dude back in their control and they had him safely restrained, Kancho just came up to him and started telling him, look, I'm not saying this to insult you or to put you down. I'm a religious man. That's not something that a religious man ought to do. But you have to stop these kinds of evil deeds. This is not good. And if you continue on this path, it will not work out for your benefit. For your own sake, you need to stop this. And saying that, Kancho then removed one of his robes, a really nice, thick cotton one that was probably very, very expensive, and he laid it across this guy's shoulders and sent him off. And nobody, Kancho especially, never saw or heard from this guy ever again. And this is actually a trope I've seen in some other stories where Buddhist priests are wronged by men or women who are in some dire straits, or sometimes not even dire straits, but just doing evil. And they, out of the goodness of their hearts and wishing to show compassion, will often still reward the ne'er-do-wells despite of their ne'er-doing well. But the story says that up to this point, nobody had ever suspected Kancho of being, like, superhumanly strong. So strong that he could kick a man in the pants so hard that he would fly up past some scaffolding and come crashing back down and getting stuck in scaffolding. Like, that's kind of ridiculous. Obviously, this is kind of a bit of a tall tale, but, it's funny. The thug certainly didn't know that, had no idea, couldn't even suspect. And everyone who heard this story obviously was mildly amused at the very least because it's funny. It's funny. Buddhist priest literally kicks a dude's ass. But they were also absolutely certain that this guy who got kicked and got stuck in the scaffolding did not walk away with only minor injuries. He probably got hurt really bad. And thus is it said that all future priests of Niwaji took after our boy, Kancho. Again, stop laughing at his name. Well, that does it. Another short one, another really folksy one. Another one with a little bit of comedy involving a Buddhist priest. I don't know what it is about Buddhist priests and being funny. Maybe it's because generally speaking, they're assumed to be very pious, harmless, innocent types. So when they get involved with putting ne'er-do-wells in their place, it's actually a bit humorous. But that's the second kind of these stories. Anyway, Ito katechike no koso wa shitare. Thank you for coming and listening yet again. Please like, share, and subscribe. Share especially to all your weeb friends. Again, I find these stories to be fascinating, and it tells you a lot about the ancient Japanese psyche and the foundational ideas and ways of thinking that came to eventually become modern Japan. And I know for a fact that some of these have influenced not only modern Japanese writers, but by extension, anime and other parts of Japanese pop culture. We'll get into that when we get to some of these other stories that are actually relevant. But again, thank you for watching, and that's going to be it for me now. Toodaloo.